All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Another episode of the Sam Rothstein Show. Thank you for listening and all that. I have a fellow podcaster here with me.
Sorry, I'm not used to being the guest.
The guest? Hello!
Wait for your part. Now that there's a camera, I don't know how to sit either. So
it's fine.
Yeah.
You're good, however.
Don't stare into it.
I've got William from Sounds of Bustown.
Hello.
You guys are the second podcast I was ever on. It wasn't mine. I had a lot of fun with you guys too. I did not shut the fuck up though.
That made it so much easier for us.
It usually does, man.
For me, if I can just start asking some questions, it's tough when people don't give you any response.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's when you start.
Or when you ask them a question and it's like, so what did it take to make the album? And they're like, well, you write the songs and you record them and then.
Yeah.
You get your album, and it's like, cool.
Yeah.
So we'll end the podcast now at 2 minutes and 15 seconds, asshole.
Coming on.
Yeah, dude.
Here's another track.
Having to coax that fucking out of people is just a lot.
I mean, I get it. Some people aren't prone to talking. Some people don't even really want to talk about themselves.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people aren't even in that zone,
right?
You know?
And I get it. I'm interviewing local bands or local musicians where it's they might not be used to this, or they're an artist. I get it.
Right.
They're close to the chest sometimes, or they just don't know how to express themselves by just talking. That's why they use music or any other medium to do it. So
that is true, and I know I started my podcast to kind of get my. Also, I'm sick, ladies and gentlemen, so if I sound like shit and I'm coughing and all that, that's why. But I started to kind of get my music friends in the mindset of yo. People are going to be asking you about your music.
Right.
People are going to want to know about this shit. So it's you got to tell them. At least I wanted to get people into that mindset.
Yeah.
Into that mindset of talk about yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Step back from your own process and think about it and whatnot.
Right.
So how long is Sounds of Bustown going on? Because I remember when I went on there to look for my episode, I ended up listening to 3 or 4 more right before that because I saw you guys did so many.
We've been doing it, well, now it's just me, my co-host moved to Chicago.
Yeah.
But it's been going on for over 3 years now. Hit 3 years in February.
Okay,
so,
cool. Happy 3-year anniversary.
Yes, thank you. We started recording in December. I wanted to do I wanted back catalog just in case we...
Yeah.
The biggest thing I found out with podcasting is that pick a schedule, pick a release date, and stick to it.
Yeah.
And I have a bunch of other podcasts. Some of them I don't do that.
Yeah.
And I see numbers go down when it comes to
multiple podcasts.
I have 5. I have my own network, Sam.
What?
Yeah.
What?
So it's called Loudcat Podcast. You can find it on Facebook, facebook.com/Loudcat Podcast. And I'm getting ready to launch a 5th one. There's another one I'm launching this Saturday.
So where's the movie one, and when can I be on it?
Well, if you want to start one,
oh, dude,
I'll produce it and put it out.
I have really been. I have to do a movie podcast. I just have to, dude. I'm such a fucking film buff, and it's all I listen to on YouTube half the time. And so I really want to do movie commentaries, where it's just a podcast over. Just do a series of those.
Just play this audio over.
Yeah, exactly. And then just tell them when you're going to start it and whatnot, and they can watch the movie with you and do that. That's kind of, all right, well, good. We got that out of the way, so I'll be on your podcast network next month with the movie show.
It's one of those things where we release every other Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I have yet to miss a date. So it might not be a full normal episode, but it's something. It's content that we're putting out there at least every other Friday.
Yeah.
So.
And why every other Friday? Is that just to avoid mishaps or to get enough people recorded, or?
Yeah, it's pretty much I can, if I'm getting close towards the end of the week, I guess it doesn't really matter what day, but I just chose Friday because not a whole lot of podcasts I feel come out on Fridays.
Yeah.
A lot of them are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, early in the week. So this new one that I'm launching, I'm doing it on Saturday because I'm well, nothing comes out on Saturday.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It's not a big deal if nobody listens to it. It's just if you were to open up whatever podcast app you have in your feed, and it's just all right, well here's a new one already.
I've shifted mine from, it used to be Tuesdays every other week, but now it's pretty much just become Friday every week.
Yeah.
And it's much easier for me to fuck with a podcast and deal with all of that on a Thursday than it is for a Monday for some reason. I don't know why.
I always feel I thrive better when I'm just it's the day before the podcast is due, and I'm just
exactly.
I'm at work at lunch, just all right, I can crank this out.
Yeah, exactly. You can just do it.
Yeah.
So what was some of the first podcasts you listened to that kind of made you want to get into it?
Kevin Smith's Smodcast.
Okay.
Back in 2007, when he released his first episode for it, I had just been laid off from an old job.
Yeah.
And I was at home on my old ass Windows computer, and I popped up through his MySpace page.
Jesus,
how long ago
dude.
this is?
Jesus.
Popped up through his MySpace page about how he started a podcast with his buddy Scott, and so I listened to that and I was hooked. And then I didn't really get to like browse a bunch until I didn't have like an MP3 player to play them.
Yeah.
Like I had to wait till I got an iPod Touch in 2008.
Okay.
And then it was just like from there on out, I was just hooked on podcasts. So there's a lot of video game podcasts I listen to. There's one called the Giant Bombcast. It's like 3 hours every week, and they'll talk about video games, but a lot of the times they'll straight off. Yeah. I like that. I like people that they have an idea of it, but they're not afraid to like just let the conversation roll wherever the conversation goes.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting about podcasting is that after a while, you find that the fan base is just in love with the people on the podcast.
Yeah.
They don't really care. Like the Fighter and the Kid is a good example. Like I'm a big fan of the Fighter and the Kid. I don't give a fuck about UFC.
Right.
You know what I mean? I like them. I think they're funny.
One of the other guys on Matt TV or something like that.
Brian Callen and
Callen.
Brendan Schaub, the former UFC fighter.
Yeah.
And like, I just like their chemistry.
Right.
You know what I mean? Same with like Kevin Smith. I'll listen to fucking Kevin Smith read a phone book. Like I'll listen to that dude do anything.
Yeah.
But he really was kind of one of the true pioneers of it.
Yeah, I mean, he was the first one. I think when you look at like Ricky Gervais.
Yeah.
He had one, but I
because
think
even Adam Carolla came after them.
Right. Yeah, Adam Carolla. It was after he left K-Rock. Yeah. And so then he.
Because Adam Carolla blew up, but even now, you know, I was a fan of Adam Carolla for a little while. But he still sticks too closely to the radio format. Yeah. You can tell that he's in love with radio.
Yeah, very much so.
You know
like he's still confused by podcasts.
Exactly, yeah. Like it's like, dude, you're like one of the flagship podcasts of all time.
You don't have to keep acting like this. Like
you don't have to take calls.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to take calls. You don't have to do reads.
The whole point of it is to be independent from radio, to do the exact opposite, and that's.
I don't know. I think that there's something interesting about that though. Of like you hear guys like Howard Stern kind of shit on podcasts and whatnot. But, you know, and their radio was an art because they couldn't just fuck around for 3 hours.
Right.
They had 6 minutes at a time, you know what I mean? And that is very interesting. But then to watch Adam Carolla and kind of like not be able to let go of that is just like, I can't do it anymore.
And for some, I don't think he started out in radio, did he? Just kind of landed there? I'm not sure.
Yeah, he literally was, like, Jimmy Kimmel was on the radio.
Yeah.
Jimmy Kimmel was on some radio promotion where he had to box somebody.
Yeah.
So they said, call in if you know anything about boxing. And like Adam Carolla happened to be right by the radio station when they did that. So he just went in the building. Which you want to talk about fucking luck, dude.
Right.
Like, his best friend and like business partner became a millionaire. Yeah. Like, it was literally hanging drywall to like that. But, yeah, man. Podcasting in general is just such a fucking weird thing that just exploded.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely exploded.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where, like, I still have to explain to people about podcasts. That's the downside.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's exploded to a point, but, like, there's still, like, I was part of the Columbus, I'm still in, but the Columbus Podcast Festival.
Yeah.
Last year, I think the hardest part was, like, explaining to people what the podcasts were and like doing the festival for it. They're like, so people are just going to talk about their podcast? No, I guess like, no, they're going to do their podcast.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of live podcasts and stuff. Yeah.
It's just a live show. And they're like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's still one of those things where it's like trying to just get through to people that like, it's like an internet radio show that you can talk about whatever you want.
Yeah, that's what I just say. I just tell people it's like, yo, it's just a conversation. It's just recorded conversation. That's all it is.
Like, usually it's like, what are you into? And then they tell me what one of their hobbies is. And I'm like, there's a podcast for it. Like, you could find somebody else talking about it.
Oh my god, dude, there's some weird ass podcasts.
Yeah, very much so.
And what's so cool is there's some that are, 15 minutes long.
Right.
Some that are 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
Like an average episode of a fucking Dan Carlin podcast is like 4 hours or something like that.
The hardcore history one.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I just finished the World War I one a couple months ago.
Yeah.
There's a lot to get through.
Yeah. And that's the thing, a lot of people don't have like the time to sit through like a 4-hour podcast or a 3-hour podcast. So they have to break it up in chunks, which means they're not listening to other podcasts while they're able to do it. So that's why I'm like, all right, I want to keep it around an hour and a half. The one with Jake when he left, when his ska band came on, Ska Shank Redemption, because they were just ending as a band. That was 2 hours long. It's the longest one we've ever done. Damn. But it was one of those ones where it's just like...
I know mine had to have been second or third.
Yeah, you are. It's like Ska Shank, and then I think Electric Bolt Circus, and I think you're right.
That's
after
funny.
that. So, but you're the only one that was one person. Everybody else had like
I can talk it
people.
up for a whole band.
Yeah, there was a ska band that had 7 people, so like, but it was good. I mean, if the conversation's good,
yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? Don't let it stop.
Yeah, I never really kept any sort of limit to mine, but now it's basically I haven't had one go over an hour and a half in a long time. I keep it anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour and a half, and I'm good to go. Because I've done a couple shorter ones too, and actually because the guests had to leave or something like that, and actually I end up liking those almost more than like a super long one.
Right.
But it just depends on the guest, I guess, to what you kind of got to coax out of them.
Right.
Because it's a lot of art forms too. It's different because I don't really restrict it to just musicians either. Right. I've had photographers or whoever on it.
And that's what I want to try to with Sounds of Bustown. That's what I because there's so many people around the Columbus music scene that it's just like I want to kind of start picking their brains about they've seen and their thoughts on it. And
that's what I wanted to do with the podcast, kind of in the second iteration of it that I started doing as well. Was like I wanted to talk to the logistics people. Yeah. I want to talk to the promoters and the like the photographers and the magazines and just the stuff around the music and whatnot too. So I try to kind of pepper those in there when I can. But so what as far as the podcast network, because I don't know how the fuck I didn't know this. So like
I'm horrible at promoting.
Well, we should definitely talk. I'm actually okay at promoting. All right. What was the first podcast of all of them?
The first one I ever did was coming up on the 7-year anniversary of it in April. Okay. It's called On the Clock. Yeah, I know, I've been doing this for a while. And I've just gotten slightly better. Yeah. It's called On the Clock, and it was something that's kind of like back in 2010. Okay. 2011, I don't know why I said 2010, 2010. Buddies of mine at work were like, we should do a podcast. I'm like, yeah. And half the time I have an idea, I never really follow through with it. Mm-hmm. But this is one of those ones where I was like, this is kind of attainable. I think I've got a drum set in my garage because I'm like, one day I'll learn how to play the drums. So I think there's stuff hanging out. Yeah, so I've done that. But I can podcast and stuff like that. So I figured that out. But it was just us at work, and it was just us bullshitting about. Sorry, I can touch it.
Of course.
Hell yeah. It was just this bullshitting about like pop culture stuff we normally like get into conversations with at work. Yeah, you know what I mean. Stuff like I have the luxury of being able to like listen to podcasts and music at work all day. So like, it's one of those things.
It's the only reason I got into it like I did, man.
Right. So
you gotta have that time. Yeah. That dedicated like where you're doing something else, but you want to be listening to it. Yeah.
So it was one of those things where that was kind of like the topic of conversations at first, and we started, just the stuff that we thought was funny or interested in us. It always delved off into like food or porn or something like that. Yeah. So it was just
both awesome things.
Yeah, and it turned out to be just one of those things where like that was where I was like, oh, I should probably try to stick to a schedule because we would get away from it. And part of the bad thing about it being at work was like it would be 3:00 and be like, well, I can go home on a Friday. Yeah. Or I can stay at work for an extra hour and record a podcast. And it's just like, we're gonna go home. And then I was like, all right, well, I got all this podcast equipment now. So I'm going to start another podcast, just to make, make the most of it. Yeah. So then I started Podcast and Half Shell with my brother-in-law and our friend Tyler. Okay. And we watched an episode of the classic 80s Turtles cartoon.
Oh, okay, word.
And then we do like a pretty much like an after show for it. Yeah, a recap for it. And it's just us like ruining our childhood. It's one of those things where you're like, oh man, this is bad. Like
that's awesome though, man.
Yeah, it's very fun. And okay, so that one I was like, all right, there's 190 some episodes. I bought like the box set that comes in like the turtle bin. Yeah. I was like, there's 190 some of these episodes. If we do one a week, we all live near each other. If we do one a week, we should be done. And I had a set point. That was 5 years ago, almost. No, almost. It was over 5. We're still midway through. So like it's one.